Let's talk about leading the public a bit. What's your message to the public about transportation issues? How do you tie that in with, you work for the governor, Governor Tom Corbett. He has a vision, he has expectations. I can't imagine what kind of expectations he has for you. Might be big. How does that play out, and how does that get conveyed to the public?
Well, let's start with the governor's expectations. I think you probably have seen for the couple of years we've been in office now that he believes we need some fiscal restraint and make better use of the dollars we have. And I guess what I've talked to the public about is when I'm out on the speaker's tour, when I'm out with the public in general, is to me, I view this organization as these are community-owned assets, meaning the 40,000 miles of road that we own as a state, 25,000 bridges. You and I are part owners of this. We're the shareholders, if you will, of this corporation. PennDOT's the corporation that maintains it, and you pay into it. Everybody out there that drives on the road, that owns a car and pays registration, license fees, and gas taxes are basically paying your shares into this corporation. So they're the shareholders. And I tell them all the time that you need to believe that we at PennDOT are entrusting of those dollars that you're giving us, and that we're constantly pushing the envelope on modernizing the agency, just like a private company would, to make best use of every dollar you give us. And in the end, our job is to take care of those 40,000 miles of road and 25,000 bridges that you depend on. All right, whether you're driving, your kids are riding to school on them, even if you don't drive, you're relying on this network because the food that comes to the grocery stores, it gets from farm to market, the products that you buy at the store, much of it comes across our transportation system, rail, airports, roads, ports. And we have to take care of those so that you can be relying on the fact that your food's going to be there at the grocery store, that the clothes are going to be there when you need to buy them, your kids are going to get to school safely, and that you're going to be able to drive around the state. So when I talk to the public, my message is we are looking at every dollar very hard that you give us, and we are constantly pushing the envelope. As a matter of fact, we have a team here, we're calling it Next Generation of PennDOT, that is working solely focused on what should we be doing differently going forward. Because in a private company, if this was a private company and we were going out to the shareholders and we said, we want you to keep investing in us, they'd want to know, what are you doing with our money and what do you expect to be doing differently going forward? And to me, public or private should be no different. And that's where the governor and I are closely aligned in believing that we need to instill in the taxpayers a belief that we are working as hard as possible to make best use of every dollar they give us. Now, frankly, for our agency, we have fixed assets, meaning these are roads, bridges, rails that age and need to be replaced. And a part of my message has been that with the age and condition, there's eventually going to be a need to invest more of your money. But before I ask you to do that, you got to be confident that I'm taking care of what you're already giving me. And that's, I believe, something that we have to instill. That's, you mentioned everybody's a marketer. I need everybody in this industry to be singing from the same sheet music in that regard, as saying this is important to communicate what we do with the dollars and how efficient we are with them. I think that instills a willingness for people to then want to invest more. It's the same way companies go about raising money, instill confidence in their shareholders.
I've heard you speak at events like engineering events, and exactly what you're saying there. I've also seen a couple of news publications about I saw it on the Awards for Excellence as I was researching on this for this interview. There's some public notices out there. Is PennDOT doing anything, like you mentioned a couple of programs, the suggestions program? That's a big deal. You just mentioned another program that you're doing. Are there other ways that PennDOT wants to or is getting this message out to the public so that they can hear what you're telling me right now?
Well, we're trying to do it through media opportunities and not just me going around to chamber events and speaking events, but also getting it out through media outlets and when given the opportunity, talk about it with any media interview. So all of our different partners are talking about. We also, it's not just us. We also have created an organization called the State Transportation Innovation Council, where we brought 40 members from the private sector and educational institutions together to, again, develop ideas for things that we should be doing differently going forward, using new products, using new procedures, policies, practices, et cetera, that are either national, international, or simply from our own state that manufacturers believe would help us reduce costs or improve performance. The State Transportation Innovation Council, I've told all of them, you need to communicate this with the folks you work with. so that, again, we're getting out to the public at large what we're doing and the business community. It's important.
Excellent, good. I want to talk a little bit about strategy, and as I mentioned a little bit earlier, a very big task, Secretary of Transportation. Most people would just figure it's bridges and highways, and they see a lot of things that need fixed. 40,000 miles of highways, 25,000 bridges, but it's also other modes of transportation: aviation, rail traffic, mass transit, intrastate highway shipping traffic, motor vehicle safety and licensing, driver's licensing. It's the ports, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Erie. It's focused on intermodal transportation. That is a huge task. All done with an approximate budget of $3.8 billion in federal state funds, which comes from motor vehicle fuels tax, which is dedicated solely to transportation issues, all done with 11,000 employees here at PennDOT. That's huge.
If you stop and think, it could overwhelm you on any given day, I suppose. But,
speak to that. Speak to...
Well, it's think about a product getting here. You and I are sitting here in these chairs. How'd they get here? All right, they could have come in by ship. They could have come in through a port, got on a train, and been shipped across the country to a distribution center, and then trucked to a store. All the projects you mentioned that I've worked on in my career, many of those were intermodal. Many of them tied freight movement and people movement. In the end, transportation is about moving freight, moving people. And either one, we've all done it. You've probably been on a plane, you've been on a train, you've been on a bus, and I don't know if you've been on a ship, but freight comes all those different modes, people come in all those different modes. So most of my studies and the whole course of the 30 years, you get out of college and you go to school for civil engineering, and then you start learning about how to apply civil engineering. And you learn that really it's about what I said, moving people and goods safely and efficiently. So all the different modes, if you look at it like you said and think about it all, it can seem overwhelming, and yet, we break it down to, okay, if we're going to move something through the Port of Philadelphia, how's it going to connect? What kind of connections do we need, and analyze that pathway? And through the various modes, whether it's highways, rail, ports, there's a pathway through there that we have to analyze how that shipping is going to occur. And that's something, even right now, we have a statewide freight study that we just started, because we're deepening the river in Philly, and the Panama Canal is being changed. There's going to be an economic opportunity created there for additional shipping in Philadelphia. Where do we target our investments? With that $3+ billion we have, how should we target investments to both take advantage of the economic opportunity for job creation, which is a big thing for the governor, big thing for us in the state of Pennsylvania, be competitive economically to create those jobs, and how do we safely and efficiently move the freight that's going to come through there to make sure we can handle it? How should we be targeting those investments today? So it's a combination of really planning, looking to what's there today, what's likely to happen in the future, what could change, talking to private business, saying, what are you thinking? And then targeting our investments to make sure that we're investing in the right places at the right time.
This is showing me the absolute necessity for the blend between the technical expertise and the ability to lead, and putting those two together to making it all work. It's like you can't have one without the other, and you're demonstrating that. And you're talking all the technical. You just listed a whole bunch of major issues that are all technical, but then you've got this leadership ability to work with 11,000 people and communities. You're working with communities and counties, and so it's like it just emphasizes to me the importance of developing our leadership skills so that we can get these things done, which leads me to my next question.